We've seen some remarkable games in 2023, but there's this looming issue that's been off in the background, and you've likely have noticed it, and if you haven't, you will have by the end of this video. But with all of these breakout successes, these great hit titles that we've seen this year so far, we've also seen some of the biggest key players in the industry, some of the biggest titans of the industry stumble and fall. Which begs the question, why exactly is that happening? How exactly is that happening? If we're looking at a game like Diablo 4 as an example, a game with one of the most recognizable IPs in existence, how does that game fail to resonate with an audience? And even more so, how does it fall off so quickly? What I'm here to do today is I'm here to argue that over-aggressive marketing, as well as sales and marketing's influence on game design, is what's causing a lot of these critical issues. Specifically, making games fail to resonate with audiences, and even more so, causing irreparable harm to a lot of these different companies and their reputations. We've seen a lot of videos over the past few years discussing how modern gaming is dead, but I believe the contrary. I think looking at the last couple of years, gaming is very much alive and thriving, if not headed into a new golden age. I'd argue that what makes people feel like modern gaming is dying is that the biggest names, the biggest publishers, the biggest titles, the biggest studios are the ones that are failing to connect with an audience, and they're failing to appeal to their customer base, investing in and then being controlled by their own marketing, rather than modernizing and culturing the creativity and the process that got those companies to where they are in the first place. The gaming industry spends over $5 billion a year on advertising in the US market alone. Gamers, like many consumers, are force-fed advertisements in almost every space they inhabit. However, how effective are those marketing campaigns, and is their cost justified? And by cost, I'm not talking just about money. While that is part of it, I'm also talking about the cost to their reputation and the impact of our impression on that studio and on that game that they're trying to release. The industry is plagued by poor planning, overspending, and ineffectiveness with regards to marketing. And what's worst of all is that most of those in sales and marketing are also influencing the direction of how games are made and how they're monetized, which is compounding this issue further and making games that either don't attract or retain audiences and only serve to fatigue the fan bases that put them in business in the first place. In a recent article from PC Gamer, players complained about an Assassin's Creed Mirage advertisement in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and allegedly in other games as well. The advertisement in question showed the Black Friday offer for Assassin's Creed Mirage. The PC Gamer article also cites that this isn't the first time that this has happened, that in 2019, Kotaku reported that an advertisement for DLC kept popping up in the in-game menu as well. The Assassin's Creed official Twitter responded saying, "Unfortunately, this technical error caused a promotion to appear in one of our in-game menus instead. We want to ensure the best player experience possible, and these disruptive pop-ups were promptly removed once we learned of the issue." Now, what I find especially interesting is that the top comment for this is, in other words, "We took your feedback. Our data shows that players will not tolerate this. We will not push this on you at this point in time." Now, this very well could have been a bug. However, the player's reaction, as well as my own, is immediately that of skepticism. And why is that? Well, that's what I was talking about earlier when I said cost to reputation. See, the more overly aggressive you are with your marketing, the more overly aggressive you are with your monetization, and the lower the quality of your games become, the less likely we are to trust you, even when something may or may not be your fault at all. This very well could have been a bug, and as such, they didn't do anything wrong. But why would we believe them? And we only recently just saw similar backlash with Xbox, where players were greeted by a Modern Warfare 3 ad that took up the entire screen and that you had to engage with to even play games on your Xbox to begin with. While I don't think it's necessary for me to fully rehash this, it has similar user reactions to the Assassin's Creed ad. However, the one thing I do want to bring up is a specific section from this article from The Verge that was covering it. In response to the full screen pop-ups and the history of them showing up on Xbox, The Verge writes, "But what I found particularly irritating about the Starfield, Forza, and now Call of Duty ones is that these pop-ups appear even if I had the game pre-ordered or pre-installed on my console. They even appeared for people regardless if they could care less about shooters or racing games. They were irrelevant, and I hate irrelevant ads. I feel like they're just pestering me for no reason." Over the years, I've been scratching my head wondering what's going on with all of this aimless marketing. And what I mean by that is that you have studios that are out there that are marketing wherever, whenever, however, to whoever they can, as much as they possibly can. And while some people are going to see that as a good thing because that's called brand visibility, the problem is that if you just stop there, that's where things just don't seem to take off, because the point of marketing, the point of advertising is specifically to be useful and have a functionality for the end user being you or me, who are the ones that would go from that advertisement to making the purchase of the game. However, if you are blindly advertising to us, we become blind to your advertisements. What I mean by that is, we'll use an example like Raid Shadow Legends, a game that a lot of people have a lot of familiarity with because we've seen the advertisements so often, but how many people have actually gone and engaged with that game? How often did you become interested in actually playing the game after seeing the advertisements for the game for the 100th, 1,000th, 10,000th time? After a while, you become fatigued from seeing those advertisements. And that's what happens as a result when you're advertising to people that are not interested in your product. It's as simple as that. What I think is going on is I think there's a general level of incompetence in some of these marketing decisions that a lot of these companies are making. I'm not saying necessarily that the people don't know what they're doing, but I just think that they don't necessarily understand their core audience and how to approach them. See, in marketing, there's a core principle. A marketing mix is what it's called. But part of that is knowing the needs of your customers and then making suggestions based on those needs. But a lot of these companies are completely ignoring that. I'm going to use Diablo 4 as a case study for the remainder of this video, as it best exemplifies my point. Diablo 4, one of the best and most recent examples for overblown and extravagant marketing campaigns, surpassed its internal sales records by making over $666 million a week after its initial release, with some now estimating that the game has sold over 10 million copies, making $1 billion in sales. While obviously there was some effective marketing, I'm questioning the need and the purpose for theming a French church with commissioned Diablo paintings, a Halsey and Suga song, licensing a Billie Eilish song, other celebrity endorsements, and more. This is Diablo. How much visibility is needed for one of the most iconic IPs in all of gaming? There were vegan meat shakes, dinners where gaming media outlets and creators were invited to Diablo-themed venues for Diablo-themed food so they could promote the game to, well, I'm not so sure, and that's the problem. If we were to compare Diablo 4's recently estimated 10 million copies sold to Larian Studios' Baldur's Gate 3 with an estimated 7 to 8 million copies sold, those numbers likely to break over 10 million after the release on Xbox, its physical edition, the holiday season approaching, and their undoubted win of the Game of the Year award. One game has garnered massive success for not only the company, but the industry, and the other, which is a live service, can barely keep their name out of the gutter for a month. Maybe I'm being too harsh, but the point that I'm trying to make is that Baldur's Gate 3 didn't have this massive marketing campaign that Diablo 4 did, and they garnered similar success, if not more, by the end of the holiday season. And if that's the case, it was just making the better game that ended up leading to all those sales. They didn't have to go through the effort and the trouble of doing these large collabs with major artists or refashioning a church or any of the other extravagant things that they did. In fact, Baldur's Gate 3 was relatively organic with a lot of its marketing. Most of it was done by people like me making videos about how great the game was. Or they went out and commissioned work from other content creators where they wanted to make animated shorts, or they wanted to have different artists make music or something like that to promote the game. That is something that the audience actually enjoys. That's something that the audience enjoys engaging with. And as such, it's more likely to, well, attract more customers and get more people to that point of sale. I would guarantee that there are people that are watching this video right now that saw Baldur's Gate from some other sort of means. Maybe it's a content creator that's one of their favorite that was talking about the game, and as a result, they went and made that purchase. I find it highly unlikely that people watched the Suga and Halsey song and said, oh, I need to go buy this game right now. While yes, Diablo 4 did initially sell well, both the game and the studio are not held in the highest respect right now. Their core audience and those who would be engaging in microtransactions aren't the ones that were captured by that marketing campaign. While journalists and other content creators initially shrugged off the concerns of the players when they saw the use of the Billie Eilish song for the Diablo 4 trailer, or were confused by the Halsey collab. What they failed to see was that this was a mining canary, warning people of things to come. Blizzard and Diablo 4 didn't understand who their core audience was, or if they did, they were trying to appeal to somebody else that wasn't interested in playing Diablo 4, something that we see mirrored in the game's design. Diablo should have been a game that understood its core audience, men in their late 20s to their 40s. They should have listened and learned from the innovations of the studios that have continued on the genre that Diablo 4 is in, like Path of Exile, Grim Dawn, Lost Ark, Last Epoch, and more. But they didn't. Why? It's because they didn't know who they were trying to make the game for. I would guarantee that the microtransaction strategy, which is the core to how Blizzard planned on monetizing Diablo 4 in the future, is not panning out how they thought it would, because the game lost players at a record rate, to the point where many players today are apathetic to whether or not the game improves. Sure, we would like it to be a good game, but, Path of Exile 2 is well on its way and right around the corner. From my perspective, more effort and more investment went into marketing Diablo 4 rather than trying to develop it for the right audience. The development cost for one of the most expensive AAA games in history is Cyberpunk 2077, which reached a massive $174 million in addition to $142 million for a marketing budget. Blizzard likely exceeded this. Does this video game, Diablo 4, justify the cost of marketing to the tune of potentially hundreds of millions of dollars, or the development costs of employing over 9,000 developers over the course of the game's development? Unlikely. But this is likely the reason why Blizzard is asking us if we're okay with them charging $70 to $100 for a Diablo 4 expansion. Why they're dancing with the idea of selling unique items, stash tabs, and legendary powers, because they likely need to extract as much money as they can for the expenses that they've accrued from all of the mistakes that they've made. The numbers on the graph didn't spike high enough, fast enough, and stay there long enough. Now, at the beginning of this video, I foreshadowed something that happens as the result of poor marketing. And it's not just the game failing. What it is that these companies don't realize it's necessarily their fault. They just don't understand why we're not the ones engaging with their marketing. We're not buying the battle pass for some reason. We're not buying the cosmetics. What's going on? Well, because they accrue all these costs, not only from development, but also from their marketing, what ends up happening as a result is they go, well, we're just going to force them to engage with the microtransactions by making it integral to the game's design, i.e., like Blizzard dancing with the idea of selling legendary powers or including stash tabs with a pre-ordered version or an expanded version of the expansion. Now, the problem with that is that they don't realize that that is a self-fulfilling prophecy of such, where they are actually actively hurting the user's experience, thus making the game less likely to be popular. If you make me buy things that I don't want to buy, I don't want to play your game. There's this famous clip that a lot of people use of Steve Jobs talking about how sales and marketing starts to direct the people in charge of making products.
So the people that can make the company more successful are sales and marketing people. And they end up running the companies. And the product people get driven out of the decision-making forums. And the companies forget what it means to make great products. It sort of the product sensibility and the product genius that brought them to that monopolistic position gets rotted out by people running these companies who have no conception of a good product versus a bad product. They have no conception of the craftsmanship that's required to take a good idea and turn it into a good product. And they really have no feeling in their hearts, usually, about wanting to really help the customers.
Over the years, it's become increasingly apparent that sales and marketing exert excessive influence over the direction of many major game studios. This dominance does not come without consequence, as it adversely affects the quality of the AAA games that we receive. Players are finding themselves bombarded with marketing content, be it upcoming games, downloadable content, expansions, microtransactions, or battle passes. This oversaturation of all of this content extends to the games themselves, where studios are incessantly pushing for more player engagement and more monetary investment. This relentless advertising blitz then leads to a phenomena where us, the players, are overwhelmed by this constant barrage, well, we become desensitized to the marketing efforts. We start ignoring the DLC, the microtransactions, or at best, we start talking about them negatively. However, this desensitization prompts an even more concerning trend: the injection of monetization strategies directly into the gameplay experience. For example, a game like Activision's Warzone, where the most powerful weapons are always the newest additions, and the best way for you to unlock them is to own the other game. This approach to marketing and monetization is not only ineffective, but it's also detrimental. It not only erodes the quality of the game design, but it also impairs the overall player experience. The resulting impact is a gradual degradation of the brand integrity itself and losing the trust of the gaming community. As studios prioritize revenue generation over the satisfaction of their players and the gaming experience, they risk alienating their audience and undermining the long-term viability of a lot of these different projects that they start. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, this isn't a gamers rise up moment or anything like that. Honestly, this is just a critical analysis of the failures of the industry as it stands right now. From where I'm standing, if you're anything like me, you're exhausted. You're tired of this. Every time you turn on your computer or your Xbox or your PlayStation or probably even your Nintendo, you're immediately hit with stuff that you just don't want to see. And the more that you see it, the less you want to engage with it. And that's going to be very true for a lot of these games going forward, because if they continue down this path, well, their games are just going to get worse as a result. And then we're just going to go somewhere else to buy our games, which is something that we saw quite a lot of this year, where some of the more popular games were not made by AAA studios. There were a few that did very well. Obviously, Diablo 4 still did very well initially in its sales, but I guarantee over the next year or 2 years, it's not going to meet the numbers that they had planned for that game to meet. And the more often that happens, the less likely that those games are to be supported, the less likely those games are to come out, and then eventually, well, the less relevant those companies become in the future. I don't think the industry really understands how much they could benefit from simply adopting more organic marketing strategies that are far less intrusive and more player-centric. Larian Studios' approach with Baldur's Gate 3, which involved transparent developer updates, early access feedback loops, and a fostering of a strong community around the game, exemplifies how organic growth and player engagement is really what drives a game's success. Making great games sell themselves. This approach not only cultivated a dedicated fan base for the game, but has also maintained positive excitement around the game post-launch, still sitting at over 100,000 players, concurrent players, on Steam. I've talked about Baldur's Gate 3 extensively on this channel, but recently in an interview with A16Z, Larian's director of publishing, Michael Dowse, said that they knew who their audience was, and the game was largely supported by the research that they did into what those players wanted and what they enjoyed. And I believe that is the major disconnect that we're seeing from a lot of these major studios. They've lost track of who their audience is and what their audience wants. They're too busy trying to capture an audience that they don't already have. I think more times than not, a lot of these studios are trying to strong-arm their way through their marketing. And it's mostly because they don't understand who their core audience is, because that's not who they're trying to aim to get. They're trying to go for a broader audience. And that's pretty obvious with a lot of the game design that we've seen from a lot of these AAA companies over the last few years. But the problem with that is that if you're not appeasing the core audience, then the game's just not going to be successful. Those are the people that keep the game up. Those are the people that are your concurrent players, the ones that are going to be buying microtransactions. Those are also the most vocal members of your community as well. Those are the people that are going to be in the YouTube comment section, on Reddit, on Twitter, on your message boards, wherever else they can go. They're going to tell people not to buy your game if they're not enjoying themselves. And that's exactly what we've seen with Diablo 4. I think one of the problems is that not only are they trying to capture the wrong audience, but also on top of that, they're just not realizing that they could spend far less money if they just made a better game as a result. Or if they made a lot of their marketing content just a better enjoyable experience for the customer. A really good example of this is Baldur's Gate 3. I realize I talk about the game quite a lot on this channel, probably will for a long time, but it's really impressive what they did. As an awesome example of this, they went and took their voice actors and had them go do a one-shot campaign over on High Roller's YouTube channel for D&D. It was a lot of fun. It was super entertaining. It was funny. It was memorable. And then what Larian did after is they ended up releasing a patch just a couple days ago, patch 5, which introduced epilogues into Baldur's Gate 3. They took the events that happened in that High Rollers campaign, in one of their advertising campaigns, and inserted it into the game, enhancing the overall player's experience. Not only just making it where we had a good time watching them play D&D, but now because we engaged with their marketing, it actually enhanced our gaming experience. That's so cool. That's so innovative. And more companies need to do things like that. But I feel like a lot of these folks just don't want to think outside the box. Instead, they just want to try to force feed it. And at the end of the day, the more you do that, the more you're going to degrade the quality of your games. The more you're going to degrade the quality or the respect that your company could potentially demand if they just did better. That's it. Just do better. And this is the result. You're seeing it with a lot of these companies, especially the big three. If you're looking at like Ubisoft, EA, is it Ubisoft or Ubisoft? Whatever. Ubisoft for today. Ubisoft, EA, or Activision Blizzard. Their reputations are in the mud. So anytime they do something, whether it's a mistake or on purpose, we immediately assume that it's nefarious. We assume that anything that they do, anything that they're planning is going to have some type of hidden intentions. And I hate to say it, but more times than not, that ends up being the truth. But it doesn't have to be that way. I've said this 100 times. The most dangerous, the most despicable, the most evil game you could ever imagine is the most enjoyable game that also has monetization that you want to buy. Not because you feel like you need to, no, because you want to support the game. If I'm looking at Baldur's Gate 3 and its community, the amount of people that are crying and begging and saying, please, give me things to buy is ridiculous. People want DLC. They want outfits. They want expansions. They want whatever Larian could possibly give them. And that's what you want to aim to do. Make a great product that connects with an audience and then stuff them with microtransactions afterwards because they want to support your game. I would be an evil game developer. Hey, studios, I got a marketing degree. Give me a call. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is a little bit interesting, a little different. I like doing these essays and doing these kinds of discussions. If you guys did enjoy this video, drop a comment down below, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this in the future. I'll probably do a news video sometime this week as well. I'm trying to do this solid balance between video essays and news. Hopefully you guys like that. If not, too bad. You're getting it anyway. Stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe, my friends, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.